security awareness that works and why often not. We heard some remarks about humans and behavior already during the discussion just before. But before we dive into the, Before we dive into the topic, I would like to spend some seconds on myself, tell you who I am and what I did and why I'm standing here. It's almost 9 years ago that I founded a company in this beautiful city of Berlin. The company was called Exploki. Probably nobody of you knows it. We were specialized in complexity reduction. That was mentioned already before. And that meant that we produced short explainer videos in order to make people aware of complicated topics, especially in security, compliance, and cybersecurity. And those videos should help to make people not only aware, but also to mitigate risk and defend against attacks. And among many customer bespoke projects, we developed multilingual and international award-winning video library in many, many languages to explain the standard cyber threats and how to defend against them. The idea was pretty simple. It was not the original idea from the beginning, but when we started to produce content like this, we found out that we always explained the same story to the same target group. Maybe sometimes in yellow with that logo and another time in blue with another logo. But the message, the core message had always been the same. So that's how the idea came up to pre-produce content and not only sell on a project base, but make a product out of it and license content to customers. So that is what Exploki did and why it had been pretty successful. Somebody else on the other side of the Atlantic became aware of what we did and called us and asked us if we would bring in our clients, our expertise, our content certainly, and our team in order to join their company. And that was KnowBe4. Before that, we were able to win pretty prestigious customers, not only here in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, but also abroad. But in 2018, we sold our company to KnowBe4. And in the following 2 years, we helped to grow the DACH region for this company and stayed there as managing directors. I don't know if you are familiar with KnowBe4. KnowBe4 is a provider of a cloud-based education or security training platform in combination with attack simulations, phishing simulations mainly, but also other simulations. And our content was a pretty perfectly fitting element into their whole training database. So that's how we became part of this company. In 2020, we left our roles as managing directors and moved into roles which have different names like ambassador or speaker or senior advisor. And since June this year, we are completely independent. We continue to take care of our lecture and consulting business, but also run our own non-for-profit YouTube channel where we explain security topics, cyber threats to the public, not specifically to companies, just to share our knowledge, which we have been able to gather over the past years. Yeah, that's brief summary about myself. So what would I like to bring to you today? That is a short agenda. I'd like to speak with you about social engineering in the first place. I am pretty sure that everybody of you is familiar with social engineering, so I will not speak about tactics and methods, how to trick people, how to manipulate people. That's no news for you, but I will give you one probably significant number that helps to explain why this is so relevant today. The major part of what I'm speaking about today is how to change behavior. And this is something that is much more complicated than everybody expects. And I hope that I can give you some insight why it is so complicated to make people change their own behavior. And I would give you some practical tips how within your organization, beside the fact that you hopefully have installed everything that is professional and resilient on the technical side, what you can do, what you should do, and how you should do it on the human side. And finally, I'm there for question and answers. All right, good. More than 80% of all security incidents are caused by the human being. It's not only social engineering, it's also ignorance. But the majority of all incidents are non-technical, all right? In a way, they are technical because attackers use technical means, or in the majority of cases, they use technical means, but the weak element is not your firewall or whatever system you install in order to prevent from being attacked. This is certainly something you know already. It's so old, but in all my presentations, I continue to present it because it has not lost its relevance. Because it's, at least for the majority part of companies I have been able to meet in the past 9 years, it's still the standard approach. Invest in technical means and technical infrastructure in order to make everything as secure as possible, and only few companies balance their budgets between those dimensions, the human aspect and the technical aspect, in a different way than this. This is certainly a very black and white picture, but nevertheless it is true, still true for today's time. And this is what we heard already. The challenge is that no matter what we speak about technical infrastructure or about the human as one element in your security chain, the attackers normally are always a step ahead of us. And so it's a pretty difficult challenge to keep up and be prepared in 100% of all cases. And you can only achieve a higher percentage, maybe not even 100%, and we heard already that it's not only impossible, but also wouldn't make any sense to raise the walls so high that nobody can jump over them, because it would annoy your users, or it would annoy your management team, or it would simply crash your budgets. But in many cases, it is extremely important to change behavior at those points and in those cases where it's really necessary and where there's no alternative. Simplest answer that I heard and many people say is just tell them, all right? Educate people in a way that they don't do the wrong things, either by ignoring or reacting in a wrong way to an attack. And that's true in general. You have to educate them. That's true. But in most cases, those who are in charge of education in this specific topic, security, do not really know what is education about and how it's structured and what you need to consider in order to make education work. And work in this sense means changing behavior. It's not that people know something, it's that people act according to their knowledge. And that's the most decisive factor. So let's start with the how. And when we speak about behavior, we have to dive in the most, or at least one of the most important organs of human beings, that's the brain. Because the brain is something that is already prepared and created in a way that makes it very difficult to change people's behavior, because it is the result of an evolutionary process over the last couple of thousand years. We have behavioral preferences inside us that makes it very difficult for you to change the behavior of your user, all right? Not only in security topics, in every topic, but when it comes to our world, your world, as we have seen, one wrong behavior can already make a big, big difference. So there's one guy who's pretty famous, by the way, because he and his input has led to some pretty famous social networks like Instagram and co. That is Brian Fogg. He is the professor of the Institute of Behavioral Science at Stanford University. And beside many other things, he says that we human beings are lazy, we are social creatures, and we are creatures of habit. And those three elements make it really difficult to change and to influence behaviors. And what that means in detail, I would like to demonstrate with three pictures, okay? When Fogg says we are lazy, in reality, he means that we are always looking for the most economical way to perform an action, all right? Over the course of evolution, we have learned to get the highest result with the lowest amount of input energy. And that is why we are still alive, okay? Otherwise, we would have already disappeared from Earth. And this behavioral preference leads to the fact that when you create, for example, a security policy or instruction that is complicated, that is difficult to follow, that your users will use the path that is titled with user experience and not the wonderful part that is titled with design. And that's not because they are evil people and hate security departments. It is because they protect themselves. They want to save energy and they want to get the best result, personal result, with the lowest amount of effort. That is one thing, the laziness. The other thing is that we follow social patterns we have learned over the course of our own life. We have pretty much, I would say, 100% cybersecurity experts here, but imagine the situation that you are a plant security person in your company, all right? And one pattern we follow is politeness, all right? So if I open the door and I see somebody following me with 2 cups of coffee in the hand, I tend to be helpful and keep the door open without asking if this person is authorized to enter this office building or plant space. This gives security people sleepless nights when it's about politeness. Okay, the other thing is we normally trust people even if we don't know them. That's, for a social community, a prerequisite to live together. But in security terms, it can be very difficult, especially if you receive a call, ask for help, and provide information you should normally not provide. Social patterns we follow make us to social animals in the world. And last but not least, maybe the strongest part that makes it nearly impossible in some cases to change behavior is we hate change. Most people hate change because change means effort, means risk. Nobody really likes to take risk, or at least the majority of people doesn't like to take risk. And it's driving us out of our comfort zone, all right? And if we move outside our comfort zone, we feel insecure, and nobody wants to feel insecure. So change as such is a behavioral, or the resistance against change is a behavioral preference that needs to be overcome in order to not only initiate a behavioral change, but also to make it sustainable. So altogether is, too early. Altogether, you need to have those three behavioral preferences in your mind when you decide and design your security instructions, your security procedures, your compliance regulations, and all that stuff that make people behave in a certain way. Only if you make it as comfortable as possible, you will have the chance to overcome those behavioral preferences. Otherwise, you work against an enemy you cannot beat. It's simply too strong. All right? Once you have considered this, and once you have built procedures and policies that are easy to understand, then you might be in a situation that people know how something should be done. So yes, we can. They are able to do it, all right? The second question is as important as the first one. Why should I change behavior? You need to provide answers to this question. It's not a question that might be openly asked to you. It is something that is in the system of the human being, that you need to be motivated in order to do something. And you need to be more motivated in order to change something. And when we look at it, I have brought along a very standard situation, all right? So imagine you are standing in front of a pedestrian light that's red. The road is clear. What do you do? All right? Some smiles. Everybody knows the situation, okay? Are children around? Should I act like a role model, or can I cross the street? Okay? This is something about motivation. All right? It's not about how to cross the street. I know how to cross the street, but it's should I? Can I cross the street? All right? And again, I would like to refer to Fogg, because he defined behavior in a very technical way. He says, okay, if you wanna make people behave, then you need three elements. You need the ability. So how do I cross the street? Can I do this cross the street? Also, do I have legs to cross the street? And do I want to cross the street? If I'm standing in front of a pedestrian light, we can assume I want to cross the street, okay? And then you need a prompt to make people behave. People act, people perform. And in this case, it would be the pedestrian light turning from red to green. This is the prompt, okay? Very theoretical, but let's get to a practical example in our world. If you have been able, through your communication measures, to create hundreds and hundreds of security fanatics within your organization that want to help to make your workplace secure and safe, they will not be able to help unless you explain to them how, for example, to recognize a phishing mail, all right? So you need to provide the ability, the how. And on the other hand, if your security instruction is as perfect as it can be, and everybody knows how to set up the best possible password in your organization, unless they want to use this knowledge, they won't do it. So once you ask them to change the password and they know how, but they don't want to, they won't do it. All right? So these two elements, or these three elements, including the prompt, need to come together. And when you are able to put this all together, then you may be successful in generating the right combination of knowing how and knowing why. And then people start to change behavior. All right? So very often I am told that it's obvious why people should change behavior. All right, it's obvious because everybody feels more secure afterwards. But imagine your topic is just one of many on their desk, on their awareness screen in one way or another. There are other departments who communicate their most important topics and their instructions and all that stuff. So it is crucial, not only, and this might be a big challenge for you as well, it is crucial to not only be competent and professional in designing secure infrastrucures and providing the right technology and the right processes. It is crucial to be or to become a communication expert, you, in the context of delivering this kind of message, all right? Hopefully you are not alone in this. You hopefully have allies within your company, or at least you are able to win allies in your company. But why and how doesn't work without communication. Communication is key in order to make people change behavior. And one argument could be that you are in charge of the critical infrastructure. And everybody nowadays uses IT. There is no workaround. Everybody works with IT. There's no process without IT, no system without IT, no invoice without IT, and certainly no payroll without IT. So everybody should be interested in a working IT environment. And if they are not, then it's your job to make them aware in a way that they accept it, not just using this finger, but winning them with this kind of story. And if you want to go one step further, then you can play this card with distributing information that makes it clear that everybody is at risk. In the last 2 years in Germany alone, and this is only the publicly available number, more than 200 billion euros in each year where we had in damages by cybercrime. I'm not sure what the current situation on our continent will change probably in order to make people more aware that security is nothing for granted. But in general, I would say it needs you to make people aware that security is an important topic. And loss of reputation, we heard this already, financial damages in the company, or even the security of the workplace as such, is certainly something people should be aware of when they think about their own contribution to a secure work environment. If you summarize this, you need to have a corporate culture that also includes security as a basic element. This is something the executive level normally is not aware of or wants to forget, all right? Because this is not the topic you wish for, right? Security is something I wouldn't call it dirty, but it's not like the Christmas party. It's nothing where you can win. It's just something where you should not lose, all right? So that makes it very difficult for you all to align with the business people, because normally you have to tell them kind of horror stories in order maybe to make them approve budget and so on. But it needs to be clear that every process, every system, and every hire needs to consider also the aspect of security. Otherwise, you won't install this element in your corporate culture. It's a very complex theme and certainly a lecture of its own, but I sometimes use the example of security by design. When I bought my first Wi-Fi enabled, what is Waage in English? Scale. at home, the system asked me to switch off the security presets in my router in order to be part of the Wi-Fi, okay? Yeah, I see your reaction, but this is standard, okay? Many products are not designed from scratch with security as an central element. And so many systems and companies are not. So this is what reflects probably best that security is something that is as important as collaboration, as other things that are nowadays part of corporate culture. And if you put those two elements together and provide the right instructions about how to behave properly and why people should behave according to your design, then you have the combination that make people change, all right? But change might not last, all right? So when we want to not only to initiate a behavioral change, but want to make it sustainable, then we have to follow some rules which are not really difficult, but might require some activities and certainly some budget. All right, and there's very often a point where theoretical and practical work goes different ways. Let me get back to the brain once again. This time not Fogg, but Kahneman. Kahneman is a psychologist out of the US. And he divided our brain into two logical parts, all right? System one is fast, intuitive. We more or less things happen on its own because it's so deeply embedded in our engine, in our system that is responsible for learning and performing action, that we do not have to think about what we do. The pedestrian light example is one example, all right? But if you want to help I made this experience, my 17-year-old daughter in math in high school, I cannot work with system one anymore, okay? I have to concentrate, I have to focus, I become very slow, and I have to use system two, all right? When we look at the relation between 1 and 2, then we learn and perform action in more than 9 out of 10 cases in system 1, all right? And only if we have to, we move to system 2. That's again caused by the evolution, all right? It goes back to the idea, walking in familiar path, saving energy, being on the safe side, not provoking risk, because the better we are in system 1, the more secure we feel ourselves, all right? So it's our unconscious ambition, everything we learn, to embed in this system 1. And now the secret, or not the secret. If you manage to embed your security ideas, philosophy, instructions, and behavior models in the system 1 of your users, then they won't even have to think about how to recognize a phishing mail or something like that. They will just do it, all right? If you have to make them think, concentrate, leave their work behind and fulfill a security instruction, then you will fail, all right? And the way you can achieve this is only by combining knowledge transfer and practice. Many security people or many decision makers I've met over the past 9 years focus on training, on knowledge transfer, okay? They say, okay, we run a training once a year, people will know, all right? Beside the fact that this training might already been used for 10 years and people know it already by heart, they won't behave accordingly. Because, first of all, it's outdated. Second, it's anything but motivating. And third, it's the wrong way, all right? Because latest after 3 months, you've forgotten what was crucial within that training. And it doesn't reflect the reality at all, because it's a training. Okay, training is theory, like laboratory, okay, like university. It's not practical work. What you have to provide as well is a practical exercise on a regular basis. That means human pen testing, all right? You need to test your community regularly. And then, if knowledge that you have transferred before can be applied on a regular basis, then people will be able not only to remember, but also to use this knowledge in an emergency case. Otherwise, they won't use System 1 in order to fulfill tasks that are designed for System 2, because this is the standard social engineering approach. Social engineers push us into System 1, although there's a task that needs to be fulfilled by System 2. CEO fraud and things like that are good examples for that. And if you provide knowledge, then hopefully not in this way. Although, please believe me, you find this still, at least in Central Europe, when it comes to knowledge transfer. Okay, yeah, we are in a workshop once a year. Okay. Now, use all modern ways of knowledge transfer. The fish needs to taste well for, the bait needs to taste well for the fish, not for the fisherman, all right? That's crucial. And another thing is, when we started with our company 9 years ago, we produced learning content for companies, bespoke learning content. But that wasn't a bad situation for us because we collected all the money for the production. But nowadays, you don't need to do this anymore. There's so much content available that can be licensed from the shelf at very low cost. And then you just need to distribute it to your users. So do not reinvent the wheel. You won't succeed. That's simply impossible. And the highest form of education is tell them a story. Okay, that is very easily said. It's the most sophisticated approach. That's what we did in all our videos. And it requires a lot of not only creativity, but also understanding of the topic as such. But if you tell stories, then people will remember. And if you tell stories that people like, they will not only remember, they will follow the advice. And they will tell other people about the story they've just heard or seen. Practical tips at the end. One thing, maybe, a mistake we have often seen is that everybody's getting the same recipe. Everybody's getting the same training. Everybody's getting the same fishing simulation, for example, if they run fishing simulations. It is absolutely necessary to differentiate among your users and divide or segment into target groups. It's like marketing, all right? You won't send a marketing message to everyone. I mean, if you send a marketing message about electric vehicles to a place or a region where there is no charging point, then your sales numbers will certainly not rise because nobody will buy it, okay? So somebody in the finance department or close to the executives team has certainly another or different security profile or risk profile than somebody working in a storage department or in the factory without maybe even having an own a PC workstation at this place. As I already mentioned, regularity means not once a year or once a quarter. much more often. Otherwise, it's not top of mind. Security has to stay top of mind with your users. Otherwise, it is not part of your security culture. All right? Continuous refreshing of knowledge. That is not complicated. You can post something or send a link to a video or a short game. Everything is available today. You don't have to develop something. And campaigns of that kind can be automated. So it doesn't require resources in your department. And as I already said, modern ways of communication, people use this kind of stuff and require or expect that you provide knowledge and information in a format that is as easy to use as this. Bad news at the end. Security awareness or making people change behavior is a long-haul discipline. All right, it's not a sprint. It's not something you can achieve within a couple of weeks or a month or something like that. But unlike the marathon, there is no finish line. All right? It starts over and over again. It's an ongoing process like a circle. It doesn't stop if you take this seriously. But if you consider those remarks of the last 40 minutes, then you can move your weakest element in the security chain and make them become an energetic element of your security architecture, because these are all interesting people, human beings with their own capacity, intellectual capital and all that stuff. If you tell the story right, how and why, then they will change, all right? This is a statistic that is provided by KnowBe4 once a year. They run a anonymized statistic throughout their cloud-based platform and measure how many people fall for simulated phishing attacks. And an untrained user normally fails in 4 out of 10 cases, all right? That's the benchmark over past couple of years. And if you do training and later on testing on a regular basis, you can bring this down to less than 5% after a year. And this is certainly not a figure that is exclusive for this provider of security training and phishing simulations, but for all right? The mechanism is the secret, not the system. All right, so change means opportunity. It's not something dangerous. So if you are successful to embed this in the heads and the hearts of your users, then you can achieve a more secure work environment, not only by technical means, but also by the human aspect.